Fergus, get up! Lord, heed my prayer and let my cry be heard by you. It's working. Join me. Lord, heed my prayer and let my cry be heard by you.
Directed by Stephen Roach, we are talking The Crucifix, also known as The Crucifix Blood of the Exorcist. Now, this is a low-budget possession movie that stars Hannah Bendz, who I've reviewed a few movies of hers. And this tells the story of a couple, Fergus and Sarah, who moved to rural Scotland from London. They've recently lost a child, and Fergus's father has passed away, so they move into his old property. And on this property, Fergus discovers buried in the ground a skull with a crucifix kind of impaled through the top of the cranium. And you know, he's kind of quite happy with this discovery, but the wife, Sarah, played by Hannah Bendz, ends up kind of being affected by it and seemingly possessed. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what I think works in The Crucifix. So, this is a low budget movie. We have seen many possession movies. Obviously, the granddaddy of them all, The Exorcist, really is still at the top of the pile, I would say. And we've had loads of low-budget ones. There's plenty of low-budget possession and exorcism movies. What can I say that this one offers? So, I would say the most unique selling point of this particular movie, and it's something I can't speak too much about for fear of spoilers, is that it incorporates kind of like Nordic Viking mythology into the story as well. So it's kind of its own voice in regards to that. That's the thing that maybe separates this maybe from other movies, is that really you're kind of not so much talking a possession in the typical sense, shall we say, and instead we have other sources of possession. That's all kind of I'll really say on it. It kind of presents the same way as pretty much every other possession movie you've seen, but ultimately the source might be different. There you go. I would say as well, this movie tries to have a slower, more considered pace, and as such it tries to come across as maybe a bit more dramatic than more of the sort of the schlocky side here. So it's a quieter movie in some respects, with more trying to have a little bit more dramatic chops, I would say. Now, it's mixed results in regards to this, I will say, but I don't think the acting is terrible. I think the cast here do a fair job. I won't say that this is like, oh, this is amazing acting or anything like that, but the cast do a fair job, I think, really kind of working off this particular script, which I don't think really helps them especially, but they do, you know, at least a very, you know, a passable job in sort of down to earth and sort of believable characters at the very least, where, you know, they kind of felt sort of believable, I suppose. No one here, there was no clunkers in regards to the acting, that's for sure. And I think this is the director's second feature, I believe, and you know it's kind of reasonable in regards to directing. Well, certainly, you know, it's a kind of workmanlike direction, shall we say? But by any means, I think it's still fairly kind of proficient. Every kind of angle, I think, was you know, was fine. It was nothing too artistic or anything like that. The audio pickups are all good, so it was kind of competently put together, if not particularly kind of flashy. I think the movies, when we do get our kind of supernatural stuff starting to happen, which really doesn't happen in earnest until really the third act, I will say. The kind of makeup effects, the way it's kind of depicted, you know, it's a fairly good job in regards to the horror aesthetics. They look reasonable. I think the makeup and the practical VFX look to be like a good standard here. And you know, again, it's somewhat sort of dialed back to a degree. There is one or two kind of creepier moments in the first two acts, but it's saved mostly for the third act, as I say. And then we have a kind of finale, which is quite different from your typical possession movie. Again, I have mixed feelings on it, and again, it's not something I'm going to really be able to give you too many details about because I don't want to spoil it. But it's certainly a different way to finish a possession movie, let me just say that. Let's talk about what doesn't work in this movie. Okay, the biggest thing for me, I think ultimately this movie comes across as a little dull. It's trying to have this slower, considered pace. I get it. But it's not particularly interesting. I think this is partly down to the general pacing of the movie. It's just a bit too slow paced for its own good. It never feels particularly sort of dramatic. All of the scenes where we have sort of threat, imminent sort of danger, they kind of feel like there's never a like heightened drama or anything like that. It all feels a little bit sort of too underplayed to a degree. I also think it doesn't help that our characters, in particular, again, we focus mainly on our couple, Fergus and Sarah. We don't really feel like we know these characters, I have to say. I mean, we give it this kind of, and I have to be honest with you, somewhat sort of typical backstory where they've lost a child. I mean, that in itself is becoming a little bit of a trope in horror movies, I've got to be honest with you. How many horror films have this? Grieving parents after losing a child. It's becoming a trope in its own right. But outside of that, I didn't really feel like we get to know them particularly well. Like, I couldn't really tell how their relationship was. Was it sort of, did they seem like a couple that were supportive of each other, or was there like a kind of more of an antagonistic sort of relationship? I never really could decide, because the movie doesn't really give us much in regards to sort of getting to know the characters. I think the actors do the best job really that they can, but the script doesn't really give us much meat on the bones here, and as such the characters seem decidedly unfleshed out. And then you add this to the kind of the slow pace of the movie, it doesn't really ever sort of grab you, to be honest with you. I gotta be honest with you, I think there's a few too many dream sequences where, oh look, it's only a dream that happens in this movie as well. Now, the unique selling point, as I say, is the inclusion of Viking mythology here. But in doing so, they had the opportunity here to create a very different type of possession movie. But instead, it ends up presenting like every other possession movie that you've seen. The possession looks like any other possession. And I was like, okay, well, you know, you had this kind of unique idea, and then it ends up being like a typical kind of Catholic, you know, demonic possession ultimately. Outside of the very strange finale, which I'll come on to in a minute. So, you know, it ultimately, I think, does squander its one sort of unique selling point. Although that in itself raises a theological problem. Now, again, I can't be too specific here, but effectively, it's saying that there could be multiple faiths that could be right. It's basically as broad as I can be. And that in itself might pose an interesting theological argument, but the movie's not having that argument. It's just kind of presenting, okay, well, that's, you know, this is something that's going to happen, and you just got to accept it. So that might be an interesting debate to have with, you know, different kind of religions and stuff, but nonetheless, the movie just wants us to kind of use it as a plot point, and it's never really sort of anything other than window dressing to a degree, I have to say. The movie waits too late, if you ask me, to get going, and when we do get going, I don't think I really cared. I'm going to be honest with you. It's just a little bit boring. And then we have this finale, and you've never seen a possession movie end like this. Let me just say that. But I'm thinking, oh, I don't know about that. It's a little on the silly side. I think you could probably argue. So, you know, it's kind of different, but I don't think it really works, in my opinion, at the very least. I mean, I give it the props for being original, but at the same time, yeah, it was a strange choice. Overall, I have to say it's a little bit of a disappointing movie. It has some elements that I think are watchable. If you are an ardent fan of possession movies, you may enjoy it, and I think you may appreciate some of the kind of the point of difference that this movie tries to make, although I don't think it's entirely successful in it. It's a 4 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What were your thoughts? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.